Few years after Charles Darwin's book On the Origin of Species was published, he wrote a long series of letters to some of his peers outlining proofs that would falsify his theory of natural selection and descent with modification. He had done so in his book also, but in personal letters he continued to elaborate on proofs and tests that would prove his theory false. This, of course, is what scientists do. They state a hypothesis and then they try extremely hard to prove that hypothesis false. Within those letters, he explained the concept of irreducible complexity, though he did not actually use that phrase. He also wrote about the concept of scaffolding to explain the appearance of irreducible complexity. As far as I can tell from his journals, Darwin was still a Christian at that time, and I suspect he hoped that some sign of God would still be found in the biosphere. Nearly 100 years ago, about 40 years after Darwin wrote about such complexities in the biosphere, the Nobel Prize-winning geneticist H.J. Muller explained how the appearance of irreducible complexity comes to exist in the biosphere. These days, what is being called by creationists irreducible complexity was called 90 years ago Mullerian interlocking complexity in the year 1918, or just interlocking complexity in the year 1939. Irreducible complexity, therefore, is not a new concept, and it was refuted long before most of us were born. Irreducible complexity is false because functionality comes after mutation. It's that simple, yet creationists seem unable to understand such a basic fact. Thus we come to Michael Behe. While some credit Behe with first explaining the concept of irreducible complexity, Muller got there first, at least 60 years earlier. By irreducible complexity, Behe meant a single system composed of several well-matched interacting parts that contribute to the basic function, wherein the removal of any one of those parts causes the system to effectively cease functioning, unquote. That concept is proven wrong by the simple fact that function follows modification. Modify a feature, and if it is not fatal or prohibitory to the organisms that have it, the organisms that have that modification will either find a function for it or ignore it. Of course, if it kills them, then it kills them. To date, nobody has been able to point to anything within the biosphere that is irreducibly complex, though some scientists are still looking. I cannot imagine why creationists love to quote Behe so much. Michael Behe accepts the fact that evolution occurred and occurs. He accepts the fact that humans, as well as all life on Earth, evolved from common ancestors. He accepts the fact that Earth is about 4.47 billion years old. He accepts the fact that the fossil record, genetics, geographical distribution of species, vestigial traits, and other evidences all support the fact that evolution happened and happens. One would think creationists would hate Behe as a minion of Satan. They do not, for two basic reasons as far as I can tell. Number one is that Behe is a Christian who believes in the Christian gods. He believes one or more of those Christian gods reach into the biosphere on Earth now and then and directs mutation. Or in other words, Behe has reduced the creators of the universe into very minor roles where they push around a few molecules and in DNA now and then. From intelligent designers, Behe's gods are now intelligent mutators. Number two is most creationists, as far as I know, do not know that Behe accepts the fact that evolution occurs and occurred. Since Behe still calls the evolutionary sciences, quote, Darwinism, unquote, one can probably understand why creationists applaud Behe's antics.